That's perfect. So my name is Maz, and today we're going to be talking about astrological correspondences and herbalism. And so this is a really big field. I have studied medical astrology to some degree of depth and studied lots of herbalism. I have a herbal medicine business called House of Origins Apothecary, and we primarily make tinctures, which are alcohol extracts of plants. Do you guys use tinctures? Yes, okay, this is a good start. A lot of people are like, when I work at markets, they're like, is this an essential oil? Like, what do I do? So that's what I do. I make alcohol extracts of plants and study alchemy, study the practice of alchemy and also astrology. I mostly use astrology in my divination practice, so I offer divination readings and have one-on-one clients. And in the past, I've done this class mostly focusing on medical astrology, but that's like a really big field to get a grasp on in 1 hour. So instead, we're going to focus on how to identify the astrological correspondences of plants in a very general sense based on the planetary correspondences, and then also talk a little bit about the practice of offering. Do any of you have a ritual practice or a ceremonial practice with like an altar that you work with? No. Oh, I love this. Okay, we are starting at the very beginning. Okay, well, let's have this be a bit of a conversation. So, let's see here. So herbalism really is this relationship between bodies and plants, you know? And one of the beautiful things about herbalism is that we're really tuning into a different level of time, you know. So often in allopathic medicine, it's like, how can we like relieve these symptoms as fast as possible? And when we're working with plant medicine or mycelial or like fungi medicine, I like see Jasper's hat over there. I'm like, I can't leave fungi out of the equation. When we work with earth medicine, we're slowing down to the rhythm of the earth, you know. And so we're building a relationship in this way in a different realm of time. We're working on a different timeline. And to really tune into that with the plants, we're also can tune into the timeline of the cosmos. So, hello friends, come close, come close. So, offerings. We're going to jump around. So like we got a little bit of a glimpse of what herbalism is. We're like building relationships with people and bodies. And that's the thing. That's where I was going with this. I got a little distracted with our new guests, new friends. So we need to form an actual relationship with plants, you know. So often in medicine, we're just like extracting constituents and hoping to relieve symptoms as fast as possible. But to tune into this timeline, we actually have like a relationship with plants. And to really learn about how they work and their energetic signatures and how they operate in the body, because so much of how they operate is through this organic intelligence. It's not just through the constituents inside them, although that's a really big gift of them. So the way that we attune to the energy of the plants is really starting so classic and maybe a little woo-woo, but with the field of our heart, because our heart emits this electromagnetic frequency that's actually 60 times more powerful than that of the brain. And plants all around us, the fungi, everything in the natural world, everything on earth that is living, hello, is also emitting an electromagnetic frequency. And so part of how we attune to the wisdom of the natural world is to enter a place of stillness where we can have our heart field literally commune with the electromagnetic frequency that a plant is emitting. So we're going to play with that a little bit later once we get through the correspondences of things. But first, we're talking about offerings. Seems like people don't really have a practice of doing that. Does anybody know like what it is to make offering? Oh. Yes, so someone said, for the camera, that when you make an offering, like at a Thai restaurant, you go and bring the bits of food over to the little shrine for the spirits. Why would we do this? Does anybody?
Spirit of generosity.
The spirit of generosity, yes, and reciprocity. To be in communion with the forces larger than us, and not necessarily larger than us, but which is the living forces of nature. And this is a really common thing all around the world. Ultimately, I think it is tuning into that generous spirit and activating this level of relationality between ourselves and the things that are maybe intangible, because there's so much that is intangible in life but is super important. And also the beautiful thing about offering and rituals, it really helps attune our focus. So I think just taking like the meta spirituality out of everything and just bringing it down to a super like basic level of like why we would commune with plants in this way and why we would want to make an offering of a specific plant with a specific astrological correspondence for a specific reason, it ultimately is honing our focus. So like if we need a lot more like motivation and drive and to like activate our will in our life, it's like, okay, maybe we want to be working with Mars. So we want to set our focus on activating our will. So one way we can do that is aligning with the energy of Mars, which is encapsulated in a plant. So to know our correspondences in plants ultimately is another tool we have to attune our focus to bring in what we want in our lives and have deeper relationship with everything living and all of the cosmos. So, does anybody have any thoughts about this? Great. So, in the context of getting to know plants through the relationship of astrology, there's the different layers, right? There's the 7 inner planets. You can also work with the outer planets, but they're very far out and they're a little more nuanced. So we're going to focus on the 7 inner planets. There's also obviously the entire zodiac wheel. Do any of you guys study astrology? Everyone's super new. We have one astrological student. I love it. Maybe 2. Okay, so the planets are like the how. They're like the way the energy moves and the way the energy acts on things in the world. Whereas the zodiac is the where. So in medical astrology, for example, when you're getting into the correspondences of plants a little bit more, the zodiac signs, the 12 zodiac signs, are the organ systems in the body. So like Mars would be like a heating action, movement in the body, inflammation maybe. The zodiac sign would be like Cancer, would be like inflammation in the stomach if you had Mars in Cancer. That's like super vague. You can't look at your chart and be like, I have Mars in Cancer. Oh no, I have inflammation in my stomach. I'm doomed. Like that's not how it works. But you see the layers here. And then the houses are also can illustrate their specific houses of health. But you're all very new to astrology, so we're not going to get super into all of that, but those are the 3 basic components of astrology. So we're just focusing on the what. We're just focusing on the planets and the energies and how those reflect in plants. And another way I really like to apply this, or I'm currently studying so that I can apply this, is for the use of making spagyrics, which is an alchemical preparation that basically takes the plant through an alchemical journey and so that you can be taken through that same alchemical journey. Has anybody heard of spagyric medicine? 1. Okay. We won't get super into spagyric medicine. But there was once a time where astrology was foundational to any physician back in Europe, a very long time ago, hundreds of years ago. And you actually could not become a doctor unless you knew astrology and some astronomy, because that's how much they thought that it reflected into the body and how we could understand, because back then they didn't really have refined pharmaceuticals like we have today. So they were treating things with the world around them. So the planets. I'm just going to take a look at my notes here for a sec. I'm going old school. No slideshow, Okay, so the elements. The way to understand this is really to start with the elements. Honestly, you could just work with elemental correspondences, and that would be a really good place to start as well. So what are the elements? Popcorn. Earth, fire, water, air. So when we think about earth, what do we think about? Groundedness. Beef. Truly though, this is good. This is a good point. So the planets that also have these earthy correspondences to them, like Saturn, for example, they're like chunkier plants. They're like sturdy, they're beefy. So when you think about the elements like that, then it distills into a more refined set of lenses. So from 4, you go into 7. So, okay, earth, grounded, beefy, thicker, sturdy. Also yin, you know, we have our yin and our yang. So earth is a feminine element. It's a receptive element. It receives. It's not like an active force that's expressing energy outwards. It's an inward, downward force is earth. So then water. Flow, fluidity, movement. Next. Anybody else? Water. Oh, life. Yes, so like nourishment. Exactly. Fire. Energy. Action. Rebirth. It's hot. So also thinking about the temperatures and the energetic qualities of a temperature is going to help with discerning the astrological correspondences of a plant. So water and earth, they're like cold. They're cold. They're wet, you know. They're dark. Like think about going into a cave. That's a very earthy environment. Or into a forest where there's like a lot of shade. Like that's very earthy, you know. It's like cool in there. Whereas if you're in a desert or somewhere where there's a ton of sun, which is a much more fiery environment, that's like hot, you know. Same with a plant. Like when you see something that's maybe going to sting you or prickle you or like that has a really strong scent, like that's way more of a fiery correspondence. So then what's our last element? Air. What do we got? Wispy. Ideas. Yeah, movement. The mind. Technology. So again, air is another yang or like active principle. So it's upward moving. The energy is moving upwards. So these 4 elements are really key to thinking about the planets. And all of my esoteric teachers, they just all say like nature is your teacher, like just go outside, you know. It doesn't matter how heady you get in any of this philosophy. It's ultimately just words that are trying to explain these concepts that are the elements manifest. So if you really want to learn about this, just meditate outside on the elements and really learn from them. Okay, so now we're going to get into the planets. So every planet has a weekday that corresponds with them. I'm pretty woo-woo, but I don't know about this. But like, if you're going to make alchemical medicine, they say it's the way. So we're going to start with the sun on Sunday. This is Sunday. And we'll just go through them in the order of the weekdays. So the glyphs are also very helpful because the glyphs, oh right, I can walk away from the mic because it's a cool mic. Okay. So this is the sun. You want to learn about the planets, study their glyphs, their sigils, and they have a lot of information in them. So this is the circle of spirit. This is like our higher consciousness. This is our ego. This is our self. This is our individuality. The sun is like the quintessence of our entire being. So when we're working with a sun plant, it's like it has this radiant energy to it, like a sunflower. This is obviously a sunflower. It's a sun plant. Calendula, it's a sun plant. They have this big radiating force to them. Sorry, just taking a look here at the old notes. The sun is also very much, obviously, it heats up our entire planet. It's the light of life, you know. It's obviously a very masculine principle. Nature's super gay, nature's super queer, but like masculine and feminine are very helpful. Masculine, when I say masculine, I mean active. When I say feminine, I mean receptive or like downward moving. The sun is like the most refined of the active principles, whereas Mars is like hot and fast and almost like jarringly intense. The sun is like a warm glow. So when you're thinking about a solar plant, it has this like warmth to it, and that's how it'll act in the body as well, as like a nice circulatory stimulant. I'm not going to go into all the body part correspondences because it's too much, but the sun is definitely connected to our heart and to our circulatory system. So you want to think about these energetic qualities when you're looking at the astrological correspondences of a plant. And also if you're thinking like, I need more light, because I'm just going to say for all of this, you can use these to like treat certain diseases in the bodies and certain physiological imbalances. But here for us, I think it's just easiest if we think about this on more energetic qualities and using them as like an offering to just say thank you to life, you know, like a sun plant is such a beautiful way to just like say thank you to somebody or something, maybe like a spirit or an ancestor, you know, just offering some of that light through a plant that carries the signature. But also, if you need more like light in your life, working with the sun plant to just support you in that way, having it as like a talisman that you can carry with you in your pocket, on your dashboard, on your altar, just on your kitchen counter, you know, as something to hold your consciousness to. That's how you can use these. So sun has that luminosity. Another thing too, when you're looking at these plants, it's like, oh, this one is not as important as like the actual morphological structure of the plant itself, but it's like, where's the plant growing? You know, is it in a big open field? Like that bank over there, definitely far more solar of an environment than deep in the woods there. However, that's not the most defining feature, but you do want to take that into consideration when you're thinking like, who is this plant? You know, what is the energy of this plant? So obviously the golden color is really, really key here. The radiant energy. Also, the taste of a plant. Now, don't go out there nibbling on everything in the forest if you're like super unfamiliar with the environment, because plants are poisonous and some of them can kill you with not a lot. Same with mushrooms. Obviously, you know that. But plants too. They might look cute, but they could be deadly. So only taste them if you actually know what you're tasting. But the taste of a solar plant, again, is going to be something pungent. It's going to be stimulating, like ginger or turmeric. They have that golden color, and they also act in the body to stimulate your circulation in that way. My favorite sun plant to work with for making offerings is frankincense. The resin is like just little golden droplets, you know, and you can burn it, talk to the sun, say thank you to the sun if you feel like you need a little more sun in your life. I was gonna get into the chakras, but like honestly, it's so varying, you know? Part of this is like, you can read these like, you know, like Aleister Crowley's 777, like books of like 777 correspondences, like tables. These magicians have like tables of correspondences of like all these things that everything correlates to these layers. But ultimately it's about like your relationship. So what you're doing here is trying to build your relationship and understand a blueprint of life just through your own understanding. So we're not going to get into the chakras. You can figure that out for yourself. But maybe we'll just ask, what do you guys think? If the sun had a chakra, what would you think?
Solar plexus.
Yes, and. Yes, and. Yes. Because the sun is like the center of everything, you know? And like the sun rules Leo, which rules the heart. So it's like, yes, the solar plexus is the most obvious. It's called that. It's yellow for sure. But then it's also like, well, it's also the center of everything. And through its light, we can like perceive the true essence of anything. So that's kind of more like the heart. So this is why you have to have your own relationship to things.
So would psychedelics fall into the sun category in the sense that they can help expand what you're seeing, or would they be more in the Neptune category because Neptune is trippy?
Do you think because Neptune's trippy?
Yes.
So the question was, would psychedelics fall into the category of the sun or Neptune, because Neptune is trippy and the sun helps you see things? I think definitely. And where I have them is in Jupiter, because Neptune's a higher octave of Jupiter. So definitely Neptune, but for the sake of staying within the 7 inner planets, Jupiter, because like you said, they expand your perception. And Jupiter is the most expansive of all the energies. I'm just going to see what time it is, because I'm kind of... 4:17. Amazing. So, the moon, Monday, lundi, luna. So this is, if the sun is like the king of the solar system, the moon is its queen. The moon is like the most archetypal feminine. It's the most receptive, and it just reflects the light of the sun. So this is the moon. We need our glyph. Okay, so it's sideways. There we go. So obviously this is a very receptive form here. And this, they say in alchemy, is like the crescent of the soul. The sun is the circle of spirit. Spirit is much more all-encompassing, whereas the soul, we start to get more individual, you know? We start to get more personalized, like that which is in our subconscious. It like defines us whether we know it or not. The moon is definitely connected to the subconscious. So if you want to be working with your subconscious, maybe with your dreams, maybe bringing things to the surface that you're like, I know there's a block in there. So then here we get into psychedelics again. Maybe psychedelics are just all of it. But that lunar quality is definitely useful for that. Oh, wait. No, we talked about it. Never mind. So habitats for moon plants are definitely more cold and damp, and the moon is very much a water element. So things that are growing along, like there aren't too many plants along this lake here, but things that kind of grow in bogs, you know, that have that, like mugwort is a super good example of this, because obviously the moon is deeply connected to our womb, and mugwort is a plant that we would very much use for this. It's also a plant that we would use for our dreams. It helps enhance our dream state. So you want to look at all these different ways in which the plant helps us. So the color of moon plants are going to be like silvery, kind of bluish green, purple, and they're much more delicate. Like solar plants are very like young. They're like a sunflower. It's like strong, prominent, you see it. Whereas moon plants are much more delicate. They're like soft, but also they do have a quality of like juiciness and wateriness because they're connected to the water. So then in terms of taste, again, because it's water, they're like mucilaginous. They're slippery. Like, you know, the jelly in aloe vera? That's like a mucilaginous thing. So like marshmallow root, you know, marshmallow root is white. The root is white. It also just makes jelly. It helps with all of our mucosal membranes, which when you get into the body is ruled by the moon. So this is a very good example of a lunar plant. They can also be a little bit bitter too, because they have that downward action. So again, the moon is very much our intuitive qualities. It's our emotions. It's our feelings. So if we're like having a moment where we're like, damn, I'm like stuck in my feelings right now. Like I need some help with this. Maybe we want to work with the moon, make offerings to the moon by using a moon plant and putting it on in our sacred space, which again can just literally be your dashboard. Like it doesn't have to be that complicated. You don't have to like build a temple to the moon. Everything is a temple. We're in the temple right now. Just having that thing to align our focus with and really call upon the spirit of the plant to help us with. Because all of these plants here, they are so intelligent, you know, like these cedar trees are like part of this like meta intelligence of cedar, you know, and they have keys. They're here ultimately in like rooted in service like to all of life moving forward in a good way. So we can really call upon them like that. Okay, so who knows what day of the week Tuesday is? Any takers? Anybody speak French? It's not Mercury. Yes, it's Mars. Perfect. You got it. You got the riddle.
What's Mars in French?
Mardi. Yeah. These my pages are so all over the place. Slideshows are so awesome, but I wanted the whiteboard and the plants around, so we don't have a slideshow. So like quiet here. I feel a little like awkward. It's like so much attention, so much stillness. So, you know, we often see Mars like this, but traditionally, this is the symbol for Mars. It's the opposite of Venus. It's the circle of spirit covered by matter. So it's good to meditate on these if you want to learn about the planets, because this shows so much, you know. But I understand why it evolved into this, because it has that like directive force. Mars is by far the most like fiery of all the planets. It's the hottest of all the planets. If you need like fire in your life, you want to find a Mars plant. So I'm going to adjust these because I have like all these papers. I feel like I'm in like 12th grade right now. I'm fumbling with my notes. It's interesting because we live in this world right now. It's like very young. Like in general, like the dominant ethos of planet Earth right now is like pure yang force, and it's very much this like matter over spirit. We're like seeing it happen. It's like the concrete jungle is spreading rapidly. Like we were driving down here and it was just like traffic, everyone in their little car, just like we are like taking over like one more lane, you know. It's like so much this just matter over spirit is what's happening. So Mars plants, you want to be like mindful when you're like working with these energies too. It's good to like, I would suggest if you really start doing this to like do it for a moon cycle and then stop, because you can like overdo it. Like maybe you need a lot of fire, but maybe you don't want to like overdo it with some of these. Same with the water. You don't want to be like drowning in your subconscious forever, you know? So be mindful. They say that Mars is like the younger octave of the sun. So if the sun's the king, Mars is the prince, you know. It's that like teenage, like super just active energy, like warrior energy, fighter energy, almost like unbridled masculinity, which is great. Like sometimes you like really need that and want to draw upon that. Definitely dynamic energy in action. It's very intense. So when you see these plants in nature, they have an intense quality. They have this like full takeover quality, like blackberries. Blackberries are definitely a Mars plant. You're like, whoa, I am aware that you are growing here. You have spikes all over you. You've taken over. You're completely invasive all over the Pacific Northwest. And if you use their essence, they will help you with your will. So Mars plants really help with this sense of will. And to know, it's like, oh my God, the essence of a blackberry bush, like of a blackberry flower, this is where it comes like actually spending time with them and sitting with them and feeling them and really understanding how they work on all different levels of our being. And Mars, it also has this like stinging quality. So plants that like sting you, like stinging nettle, another very classic Mars plant. You know, it actually like gives you a rash. But when you eat it, it's interesting because it's very cooling for inflammation in the body. It's very helpful for inflammation with the body. Same with blackberries. They're full of antioxidants. They actually help relieve inflammation in the body. So again, looking at the whole picture of things. So Mars plants, thorns, jagged leaves, like whereas the moon plants, they're smooth, they're soft, they're maybe juicy. Mars plants like nettle that has those jagged leaves, or like Oregon grape, it has those like sharp jagged leaves that could almost maybe cut you when they're like really hard. Woohoo! It's 4:30. So no hard feelings if you want to go to this stomach talk. Please go, please excuse yourselves, do what you need to do. Can anybody think of some other Mars plants? Holly. Absolutely. Holly, ivy, just things that like completely take over. Maybe they have red berries, but maybe they don't. Their taste, definitely going to be very hot, spicy, pungent, like cayenne pepper. I mean, all the spicy peppers, the chilies, that's very obvious. That's like a Mars plant. So these are all the things you need to consider. Now, in terms of ceremony and taking care of your own like personal rituals and plants like that, I really think tobacco is a very amazing Mars plant, you know. It definitely has taken over too. It's one of the probably the most cultivated plants, you know, like it is a huge industry, and it's basically like possessed people into using it. It's like exerting its will over top of our spirits. It's like, yo, I am here and I am tobacco, you know. And a lot of elders, a lot of people who work with wisdom keepers, who work with earth medicine, really say it's like a hotline to spirit. And like if you need to really like take care of something, you like sit up, you know, you sit up in your seat and you work with that tobacco, basically just talking to creator, the force of creation, using tobacco. So Mars plants in general, you know, if you really need to like take care of something in your life, you want to be working with that will. You want to be clear like that. So that's Mars. Now, Wednesday. Mercury. Nice. Mercredi. We got this. So element, Mercury. It's air. Yes. Mercury is very much air. You know, it's like the great psychopomp that like moves between all of the realms. It's the communicator. When we think about Mercury retrograde, oh no, Mercury retrograde, my technology's not working, because Mercury rules the forces of communication. Also our nervous system. So Mercury's kind of crucial right now too. Now Mercury Mercury's cool because Mercury has all of the... It's the only one that has all of the 3 symbols. It's also the only one that carries a neutral energetic. So it's not masculine, it's not feminine, it's all of it. Which is why in alchemy they say that alcohol is the mercury. It's the spirit of the plant. When you're extracting the spirit of the plant, you know, it's the universal solvent that can carry all of the constituents, all the information. It can carry your formulas out because it holds all of it. So, habitats for mercury, like dry, high alpine things, you know, things that are really wispy. I have this like cute little piece of grass here. This is very mercury. Look at how dry this is. It's just like, funny. I was looking at these when we were driving these grasses, and I was like, oh yeah, and the Empress card and the Tarot is like, got the grass. I was like, oh, but Mercury's not the Empress. That's so Venusian, you know? Like, you think about these grasses, you think about like the great harvest goddesses like Demeter and Isis, which is so feminine. But then also, like, Isis is so much connected to Virgo, which is so much connected to Mercury. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So then I came back to the grasses, and I just saw this like feminine principle through this layer of correspondence. And when you start to really muse upon these things, somehow you just make meaning of the world around you, and you come into this deeper relationship. And it's really fun to just weave in the mythology of all the things, you know, and be like, okay, yeah, this is really, these grasses are like super mercurial in a very deep way. Okay, anyways. So one key trait of the mercury plants is they have a hollow stem. So when you snap them open, I don't know about this. This does, oh yeah, no. Definitely has a stalk that can be hollow. That's cool. So you want to play with it, you know, get to know it. They also often have strong roots and like a bigger flower, like they're balanced like that. Like Osha is a very good example of a mercury plant. You know, it has super oily, aromatic roots because it's mercury, it's air. So those volatile oils will like carry and you'll be able to smell them. But it also has, Osha has these like big flowers. Osha has some, you know, poisonous lookalikes. So again, be mindful with the things that you're going to harvest. Also, respiratory tract is like, Osha's like an amazing respiratory herb. So there's another layer where you're like, okay, I'm seeing all of these layers. Because if you're going to be like, you're a Saturn plant, like you want to really know that that's a Saturn plant. But you can work with them in lighter ways just for your purposes. Now the energy obviously is yang, it's moving up and out with Mercury. Even though it's neutral, it is air. So that's how we get to this up and out quality. And lots of movement, like things that are blowing in the wind, or sometimes it like grows over here one year and then all of a sudden it's growing over there one year and you're like, how did that happen? Because it's a mercury plant. It's in motion. So then another quality of how they taste is this like diffusive taste. Like, have you guys ever had spilanthes? Yeah, so you have spilanthes and like your whole mouth turns to fuzz and the energy sort of like tingles through your whole body. Echinacea has a very similar thing. That taste is a mercurial taste. It sort of sends the energy through your body. Now, we're at myceliate, so what mushroom would be mercurial? This is like a trick question. You know, maybe. I like that, and it kind of looks like a little brain. Totally. Okay, morels. I was thinking medicinal mushroom. Lion's mane. So I didn't even say this at the beginning, but basically what we're doing here is exploring the doctrine of signatures, which is that like a plant reflects its function through how it looks. So lion's mane like looks like a brain, it's white. The mercurial plants are kind of like the lunar plants. They're white, light purples, silvery. They also is connected to the nervous system. So when you get a little deeper, you know, Mercury, communications. Okay, how does my body communicate with everything? My nervous system, you know, you dig deeper. Lion's mane is like the perfect little, it looks like a little brain. I like that there aren't any mushroom correspondences in like these old alchemy books. It's like now we're exploring that. Okay. How's everybody doing? Anybody got thoughts, questions?
I do, but I'll wait to make it to it.
Awesome. Okay. The next one is Jupiter. I haven't given a talk like this on my own in a long time.
Welcome to it.
Yeah, thank you. I just like roll around with my business partner everywhere, and then I just read my notes while they're talking, and I'm like, oh dang, my other brain's not here. It's good to be here. Okay. So Jupiter, we have the cross of matter with the soul of spirit coming out of it. Or sorry, the crescent of the soul. And we see this like outward flow of things. It's like up and out. Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system. So Jupiter in astrology too is also like faith, our beliefs, like these higher spiritual values. I definitely think all the entheogens go in the Jupiter category. I also think Reishi goes in the Jupiter category. Maybe I'll get into that in a second. Jupiter is also connected to the element of air. I mean, it's like a giant gas planet, so for sure air there. And so if you really, it's also, you know, the great benefic. When you think about the archetype of Jupiter, it's like benevolent leadership, or like there's this quality of like royalty to the energy of Jupiter. One of my teachers, my astrology teacher, said that if you want to make offerings to Jupiter, it really likes like exotic things, you know, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is like the sign of the traveler. So Jupiter has this quality of like deep expansion. So when you like need some of that in your life, when you need a higher perspective, when you need to really like, I would say the sun is more like clarity to see, but also just an upliftment, a joy, a levity, that kind of light. Whereas Jupiter is like, you need that bird's eye view. You need to become an eagle to like see into things and be uplifted in that way. That's Jupiter energy. Now, if you go overboard with Jupiter energy, if you're like, you know, just become in full gluttony mode, like ultimate hedonism, like that can be kind of the shadow of Jupiter, which is why it has this connection to the liver, which is why I think, and you know, Reishi sort of helps us just clear out toxins in all ways, but it also like has these like deep spiritual principles when you really like work with the Reishi that you can get to. So this is why I think it's connected to Jupiter. Now, so it's very big, it's very expansive. Think about that. If you were to see a Jupiter plant, what would you guys think you might see? Just
Sequoia?
Yeah. Can you like express some of the qualities that a sequoia has?
Ginormousness?
Yeah. Yes. Sequoias are ginormous trees. They take over entire forests. So it's big, it's expansive. Kind of like Mars, but big. You see your trees with the Jupiters. Again, it has that level of like girth to it where you're almost like, ooh, I see that. And also just like strength and beauty, like maybe like thicker leaves and shiny. Also because it's a gas planet, it might have that more aromatic quality to it. Because it does have this connection to the liver, your bitter taste can be here in the Jupiter plants. Also, very nutritive things. So like food plants can be Jupiter plants. Food plants can definitely be Venus as well. So the day is Thursday. Now, I think cedar is an amazing example of a Jupiter plant. Like it can be used for so much, you know, like the indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. I've heard multiple tribes called it like, I don't know which one specifically, but called it the tree of life just because it gave so much, like their houses, you know, the wood, the canoes, like the wood of these trees was used for like literally everything. Also like the thujone in it, the volatile oil is like super antifungal, so they could keep all their stuff in there and it wouldn't rot, so it would be like protective. And they have that like protective spirit to them. Also, you know, in a lot of like ceremonial communities, like offering cedar, it's kind of just this like generous, has this like sweet quality that you can really like take care of almost anything, just like with the cedar, the leaves of the cedar tree. I don't think leaves are the right word, but you know what I mean. Lemon balm also is a very good example. You know, it like grows in these like big, nice like bushes, and it has this like amazing, like you smell lemon balm and it's just like, oh, nice, uplifted. Okay, we're getting through it, my friends. Venus. What day? Yeah, we're going in order. It's like Freya. That's how I remember that one. So what do we think about Venus? What water? What? Oh, I just gave it away. What element? There's two.
It's water. Is it water and earth?
Yeah. Water and earth. So it's like when you think about water and earth combined, it's like lusciousness, you know? The Venusian plants are just enchanting, luscious. Their environments, you kind of like, this is almost, you're like, ooh, like I'm in heaven right now. Like I'm in a special kind of place right now. It's also a yin. Yin plants are Venusian, so it has that like downward receptive quality. And when you really need to get into like the receiving mode, Venus and the moon, definitely go there. Also, obviously Venus, like what do we think about when we think about Venus? Sex and yes, and love. You know, it's like those relational qualities. Also our emotions, you know. They say that Venus is like the spiritual heart. It's also deeply connected to our creativity, so when we need more creativity in our life. Although I think the fire plants can be very helpful. They say that Venus is the lamp that holds the light of Mars. So she helps us wield that fire, and that's where that creative spirit comes from. Her habitats are going to be much more cold and moist. And they have this like elegance to them, the Venus plants. Cleavers is an example of a plant that I really like for Venus. You might not think this when you look at cleavers, but they like stick to you, you know, and like sometimes relationships like get a little sticky. And cleavers energetically, like if you work with the subtle energetics of cleavers, can really help like dispel those like sticky relations or like that codependency or like almost like the shadow of Venus. They also have these little white flowers. There's just like a delicacy to Venus plants. But because the feminine, when you think about the feminine and her like raw vulnerability, there's this quality of delicateness. But then also like roses. Roses are so strong. They have this like amazing smell. They have thorns on them. So it kind of goes both ways. Like when you think of like really tropical, amazing flowers, that's when you're like, whoa, like that lamp is like strongly holding the fire of Mars, because you like feel that fire and you feel that presence, but there's also this like enchanting feminine nature to them. So it kind of goes both ways. But again, you want to work with these when you're like maybe needing to take care of something relationally, like not even just love in like a romantic sense, but just so you're like, damn, like I got this issue with my boss at work, or like I got this thing with my mom. It's like maybe you need to work with one of these plants to support you through that thing. Also because it has this like all of the yin elements is very grounding. Venus can be very grounding. So when you need to ground, obviously go to the yin elements. Now, this is our last one, Saturn. What day of the week? Saturday. You know, and you can get like super heady about this. Like they say the way to start working with spagyrics, I know we're kind of like new to the alchemy game, but you want to make a spagyric for every day of the week and every planet, and then you take them every day until they're gone. And you literally take yourself through this evolutionary journey of the planet. So with this, if you're like, oh my gosh, I like need some discipline in my life, because Saturn is like, it's discipline. It's going to teach you those hard lessons. Maybe you need to like do something every Saturday with this energy of Saturn, like make an offering to Saturn, meditate with one of these Saturn plants to really like click into that. And it's just for you, you know, it's like, again, back to that, like setting your focus to what you want and using these plants as a way to cultivate that in your life. So Saturn is very earth. We didn't do Venus. But this is Venus. Some say it's also like the hand mirror. It's like you get the clear reflection when you like really look through this lens of love. So here's Venus. Now Saturn should have got a little towel or something. So it's the opposite of Jupiter. They say it's the great malefic because it, you know, classical astrology was really just like fatalistic and rough. So They're doomed if you have bad Saturn aspects. But anyways, we see that we have matter over the soul, which can be hard, you know, it's grounding. The energy of this is very grounding. That's good though. Like sometimes we really need that in our life. And you know, if you're having like, if you're in your Saturn return and you're just like, damn, like I've learned this recently. I was hitting it with these Jupiter things. That's why I'm speaking from experience when I'm like, only do this for a moon cycle. I did the Jupiter thing for years. And when I was working on this, I was like, oh, I Jupitered out for a long time. And let me tell you, I've expanded in ways I didn't know possible. And things are a little ungrounded. So now I'm like, oh, might be time for some Saturn in my life. It's good. So morphology, what do you guys think? Earthy, strong, sturdy. Yeah, it's like woody, dense, rigid. Also, because Saturn is like kind of connected to this element of death, like life and death and cycles of time, there can be this kind of like starkness to these plants. Like I think bristlecone pine is a good example of a Saturn plant. Like they grow super high up in a very specific area and they have so much space around them and like nothing else is really growing around them. And they're just like, I've been here living for 5,000 years. I'm going to keep living, you know? There's an intensity to them. And because Saturn also, you know, it's like that holds this threshold of life and death and is the keeper of time. It's funny that we're like, oh, Father Time. It's like, no, actually, Saturn is super feminine. It's like the most yin in the Kabbalistic tree of life. It's like connected to the Holy Mother, you know, because it's like through our wombs, through the womb of the mother, through this womb of this earth that like all things have form. And so it's intense to become into form, you know, that it's like all of a sudden we're not spirit. It's like all of a sudden we're form. We're separate. We're separate from things. So in that separation, it's like, okay, there's an element of life and death. That's why they can be connected to the toxic plants, poison plants, but in a different way than Mars. Almost in a, just know that. They can also smell really bad, the Saturn plants. Have you guys seen those or heard of those flowers that just like smell like rotting meat? They're like big, rotting meat flowers. That's Saturn type of energy where you're just like, oh, what is that? Now, the energy of them is going to be like cold and dry when you actually take it into the body. That's also like constriction, condensation. So something very astringent, you know, that like brings things together. Also, if you need to like uphold your boundaries, you know, if you have like leaky energetic boundaries, that's Saturn energy. Taste-wise, so I already mentioned astringent, but also salty, you know, things with like lots of minerals. That's the salty taste. Almost like if you were to eat a raw piece of kale, that's what like salty flavor is in herbalism. Another pattern in how they grow is like, horsetail is a good example of this. It has like the concentric rings going all up and down it. And it's also like a super steady pattern because Saturn is that like discipline and rhythm. Also, horsetail has high minerals, you know, again, it's that correlation to the like structure of our being. So that's all of the planets. Oh, one more example of a Saturnian plant. So I really like myrrh when I'm working with Saturn ritually. Myrrh, I think Saturn, there's this element, again, I was like a little all over the place talking about the life and death thing, but when we come into form and when something comes into formation, there's always a letting go, you know, and when we're moving through time, it's like, okay, now we're in the future and the past is dead. And sometimes there's this grieving that comes just like through the act of bringing something into formation because it's finite, you know, form is finite. So I think when we need to move through grief, I think that's specifically a very Saturn quality. And I think myrrh is really good for that. So that's my little tip on Saturn. Okay, questions, reflections.
So I have a question. You were talking about certain plants working with the moon to help enhance dreams.
Helping what?
Helping enhance dreams.
Enhance dreams.
How do you turn dreams down?
How do you turn dreams down?
Yeah.
Smoke some weed? Other than that, okay. Well, that's a really good question. I think wood betony in like small doses can be super, super grounding. Are your dreams like nightmares or they're just too intense?
Like traveler dreams or like a whole novel every night. It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah, the meadowsweet can be really or sorry, not meadowsweet, wood betony can be super helpful for just like bringing us into our body. I almost wonder if I've never experimented with this, but I love blue lotus for the dream time. I feel like mugwort for a dream plant kind of is like, here's everything at once, whether or not you're ready to see it. And sometimes you like wake up and it's too much. Same with like valerian. It's just like, whoa, that was a lot. But blue lotus is almost like, okay, let's like activate everything into the like turn your subconscious into a temple. So I also wonder if working with something that may be enhancing, but if you were to do it in a very conversational way and really like ask the plant to help you turn them down, and really meditating before you go to bed too, maybe like what you want to experience in the nighttime can be really helpful. Yeah. Yes.
What is the word you use that starts with an S?
Spagyrics.
Can you explain a bit of like what that means?
Yes. So spagyrics are an alchemical preparation that basically there's different ways to make them, but in alchemy there's 3 principles: salt, mercury, and sulfur. And these correspond to the different parts of the plant. The salt is the body of the plant, the physical part of it. The mercury is like the volatile oils and the alcohol. And then the sulfur is I might be getting those two mixed up. Anyways, that's why I haven't made one yet. The sulfur is like the evolutionary function of what the journey that this thing is going on. So you basically ferment the plant. You basically have it stew in its own juices by just having it in a vessel, and then you use the alcohol from that fermentation. You separate that from the body of it. So you have the mercury now, and then the salt is separate, and then you burn that mark in somehow you burn it in like I forget the name of it, but you want it like a crucible. And then you get salts, and you need it to be like a white ash. And you like powder this up, and then you tincture that. You like recombine it, and then you separate it again. And then you consume it. And so they say that you're taking the plant through this journey, and then it is taking you through the journey too. I've only really worked with this really deeply, taken a spagyric for some Venusian things, and it was profound. It was a profound journey. So they're good. There's a company called Alchemy, like AL-KEMI, and they have a very deep, like a lot of spagyrics that you can buy and try, and you take like 2 drops and they are effective. It's very cool. So that was like spagyric, super, super light, but you got to know your correspondences, and they say you're supposed to like harvest the plant at the planetary hour, and then like everything you do is like encoding it with this essence. It's really about your intention. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Cool.
What's your favorite way to work with blue lotus?
Well, we make a blue lotus tincture. You guys missed the introduction, some of you, but I make herbal medicine, mostly alcohol extracts of herbs, of plants. And I really like our tincture. It's blue lotus with honey in it, and it's really sweet. Also just the tea. Really strong blue lotus tea, like 2 flowers, 3 flowers in a pot. You want to make sure when you're working with blue lotus that it has the stamens attached to it. Otherwise, you're not getting all the good alkaloids. Yeah. Any more before we have a little 5-minute plant sit?
When you say alchemy, it's just like about the idea of like transformation.
Would I say that?
No, like what is when I think of the word alchemy, I'm like something turning into gold or whatever. But I don't know this for context.
Oh yeah. Well, alchemy is definitely a very specific tradition, that comes from. It's debatable where the actual origins of alchemy come from, but it's very, very old, and it is ultimately this process of refinement. I do think that, all the alchemy teachers I know out there don't call themselves alchemists. They all say that they won't call themselves alchemists until they make the Philosopher's Stone. And I think that it is a metaphor of turning lead into gold but it's also very literal. Like the true practice of alchemy, you start with your plants and then you move into this spagyric process and these extractive processes with the metals, which can be really intense. If you're working with metals in a lab, you can literally blow yourself up or like make a poison and like consume it and die, you know. It's like can be volatile. That's why you start with your plants. But they also say that, you know, when you're really making these medicines, your lab should also be your like meditation space, so you can really like be in a zone. And so I think as you take these plants through these essentially processes of chemistry, you know, and experiment with them in that way, you just learn a lot about the nature of consciousness and yourself and the world around you, that you refine your spirit through this practice. And they say the philosopher's stone, you know, is what you're really trying to get to, which is like the key to immortality. And I think that that happens by learning how to have your consciousness reach the next level, so that when your body, your physical form, your salt passes, you can like maintain that level of consciousness. So it is ultimately a process of deep refinement, of turning lead into something gold, something beautiful and useful. I still got a lot of work to do. I'm young. They also say that you practice alchemy so that you can like live longer, so you can learn more because it's that endless. Yeah. Okay.
Do you have tea? Or there's also tea?
Yeah, so I forgot everything when I was leaving my house, including a jacket. And I didn't bring any medicine. But my website is houseoforigins.ca. And we got herbal tea. We got blue lotus tea. Actually, it's the only tea we have. And then we have a whole product line, different tinctures. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? Oh, one thing. We're offering a ritualized like microdosing lifestyle transformation in October, me and my business partner. Where you microdose, and every week we go through an element and we do ritual the whole month and get deeper into some of these esoteric principles. And so if you're interested in joining us, maybe just come talk to me afterwards. And I asked to be outside so that we could hang out with a plant. So I think we should do that, because I'm just out here as the messenger, little Mercury beam over here. But these guys are who we actually want to learn from. So, you know, just super quickly, who's connected to a plant before, done a little plant sit? We got a couple. So the way to do this, you know, first you want to introduce yourself. You don't have to speak out loud, but if you can, it's good. State your intention, you know, and if you don't have anything physical to offer, sometimes I just give a little hair or sing a little song, but also just like really visualizing like some light, or sometimes I get really mystical and bring them kind of like heady little gifts like golden ankhs or something, but I'll let you figure out what's good for you. And then just really connecting to your heart and like feeling your heart field like expand into that of the plant once you've like asked permission, and then just see what comes up. And sometimes, you know, you might not think you're getting anything from the plant, but it's like, what are you feeling? Like really pay attention. Or like if you have a thought come into your head, or you have a song come into your head, like that could actually be information. So you can get up, and I'll set a timer for 3 minutes and go hang out with something. And also we were doing this to learn about the correspondences. So, you know, look at it, maybe touch it, and see what's there.